Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tracing not just history, but a single family's incredible roadmap across, well, centuries of Central European upheaval. The source material you've shared is this remarkable family history they've titled The Tale of Two Cities.
It really is the ultimate personal history. We're following the Maldini lineage, starting in this ancient, deeply layered city of Sirmium, and tracking their evolution all the way to the commercial heart of Zagreb.
And our mission for you, the listener, is to use this intimate, multi-generational story as a kind of lens. We want to understand how personal enterprise, how career paths, even how family roots are constantly shaped and often destroyed by these shifting imperial powers and the invisible lines of new borders.
It's not just a list of events. It shows that in a region that's constantly being redefined by conflict, success is never permanent. This family's life is packed with these moments of profound ethnic mixing, rapid corporate growth, and then, swift nationalization.
It's maybe the ultimate illustration of how geography and politics dictate destiny?
It really is.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the cradle of their story, Sirmium. Today, we know it as Sremska Mitrovica. And we're talking about a city with immense historical density. It was first mentioned back in the 4th century BC, a settlement of Illyrians and Celts.
But it was the Romans who truly put it on the map. After they conquered the area in the 1st century BC, they proclaimed Sirmium the economic and political capital of Pannonia.
And at its peak, the records show it had 100,000 inhabitants.
100,000. That's a metropolis in the ancient world.
Absolutely. 10 Roman emperors were born there. That kind of deep institutional history must have left cultural layers that every power after that, from the Ottomans to the Habsburgs, tried to either leverage or just erase.
And speaking of that, the rulers shifted drastically in the 16th century when the city fell to the Ottoman Turks.
And that brings us to the defining dynamic of the whole region, right? Geopolitical volatility.
Yeah, exactly. So after the Austro-Turkish War of 1716-18, the Habsburg monarchy takes Sirmia from the Ottomans. And this land, as the source material explains, was immediately integrated into what they called the Habsburg military frontier, the Vonja Krajina.
We tend to think of this frontier as just a defensive shield. But what did that actually mean for the people living there?
Well, that's the key insight. It wasn't just a border. It was a massive social and political engineering experiment. The primary purpose was defense against Islamic armies. And to achieve that, the residents were essentially militarized.
So their entire existence, their economy, their land, their legal standing, it was all conditional on serving as border guard.
Precisely. For the people living there, you were guaranteed land, but in return, you owed mandatory military service to Vienna.
And because the land had been depopulated by the Ottoman wars?
Right. The Habsburgs systematically invited people from all across the empire to settle there. They created this deliberate, astonishingly mixed population.
And this is where we see that famous ethnic blend forming. Croats, Serbs, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, Ukrainians, and, importantly for our story, Italians.
It was so calculated. By 1776, the Slavonian military frontier had nearly 180,000 rural inhabitants. And Vienna played favorites. They invited 10 to 12,000 German settlers because they trusted them to form the backbone of the civil administration.
And the sources confirm that Italians were treated in a similar way on the western flank of that frontier, which strongly suggests a family name like Maldini was one of those early beneficiaries of this resettlement strategy.
They were essentially imported citizens, trusted to keep the border secure. But what's fascinating is that while Vienna encouraged specific groups for specific roles, the daily reality was just profound mixing. Ethnic marriages were common, especially between Croatians and Serbians and Croatians and Germans.
It was a human kaleidoscope driven by pure necessity. And it's during this turbulent, multicultural era in Sremska Mitrovica that we find the first traces of the family. We sort of have to become forensic investigators, digging through what they left behind in the local cemeteries.
We do. And our search begins at the Catholic cemetery. There's this mysterious, unmarked family crypt number 1333. It's impossible to date without names, but it's assumed to house the oldest Maldini ancestors in the city.
Then we get concrete names. We have Constantine Maldini, born 1880, died 1950, in a marked grave. But the core ancestor for the line we're following is Deda Stjepan Maldini,
who was also born in 1880.
Also 1880, so that instantly sparks curiosity. Were they brothers, twins, maybe?
It's a generational curiosity rooted in that year, just as the military frontier was nearing its end. Now, we know Deda Stjepan was married to Louisa Neubauer, And you should note that German surname, another clear reflection of that intentional ethnic blend we were just talking about.
Right.
Louisa died young in 1910, and they had one child, Ladislav, born in 1906.
And here we get a crucial bridge detail that takes us out of Sirmium and into Zagreb. The 2006 cemetery records show that their son, Ladislav Maldini, paid for the upkeep of Louisa's grave way back in 1979.
And the address he used was Ilica 36, Zagreb. That small administrative detail, that physical address in Croatia's capital, it links the family's roots in Srem directly to their new life.
The past is literally being paid for by the success of the new generation in the new city.
That's a powerful metaphor, isn't it?
It is, and that success really begins with Stjepan, the 1880 ancestor. His career path is just a direct product of these geopolitical shifts. It shows how adaptable these people had to be.
Stjepan was perfectly positioned. He served as a volunteer male nurse on the military frontier at the Austrian military hospital in Plitvice Lakes. So he wasn't just tending wounds, he was absorbing the management structure of a large state-run institution.
And here's where the Habsburg collapse becomes Japan's opportunity. When the Austro-Hungarian monarchy falls apart in 1918, that military hospital is immediately converted for civilian use.
And his specialized experience was exactly what was needed. He was appointed the first manager of the new civilian complex, which included the first hotel and restaurant at Velika Poljana. He spent years there accumulating all this valuable knowledge in logistics, staffing, public services.
And then he leveraged that expertise. He moves to Zagreb and opens his own restaurant, Sremska Menza, right near Jelačić Square. Now, the word menza is Hungarian for canteen, and that tells us a lot about his business model, right?
It does. It wasn't high-end dining, not at first. The menza concept meant good, cheap food served buffet style. Quick, efficient service. It catered perfectly to the growing professional and working class of a rapidly modernizing capital.
It was business model innovation, driven by efficiency he learned in a military complex.
Exactly, and the business exploded. It employed dozens of people. Stjepan, now an established entrepreneur, showed fantastic risk diversification by expanding quickly. 2 more places.
The first one was Maldinovac in Gracane, which was the opposite of the Menza. This was an upscale, regular restaurant in an alpine setting focused on traditional local specialties.
Right. They served classics like cottage cheese and sour cream Sir Ivrinje plus Tivatici, and popular European standards like schnitzels and pastries.
So they simultaneously captured the market for cheap, efficient lunch service and the market for traditional destination dining. That's just smart business.
And they completed the circle by opening a smaller menza at Ilica 36 Thaidanai, the same address Ladislav would later use. But this one specialized in Srem food, tying their cuisine and identity right back to their roots.
The family dynamics also shifted to support all this. Stjepan, a widower, married Mariana, also a widower with 3 kids. With his son Ladislav and an adopted son, Puba, this new blended family of 7 all helped run the restaurants.
It's a remarkable trajectory. They go from being Italian-descended settlers required to serve the Habsburg Empire to managing a successful restaurant empire in the Yugoslav kingdom. The old empire collapsed, but they seized the opportunity the collapse created.
But the next generation, Ladislav, he reflects the changing economy of Zagreb itself, moving away from food service into these high-level corporate roles.
He does. Ladislav married Zora Stojanovic, who he met through the choir, a lovely continuation of that link back to Sremska Mitrovica. They married in 1932, had 4 children. And here is where we get the most colorful detail.
I think I know what you're going to say.
One daughter, Maja, was born in 1935, and her birth certificate listed her father as, and I'm quoting here, Baron Ladislav Maldini, occupation restaurateur.
A baron? Why would a Mensa owner's son claim a title like that in 1935? This is post-imperial Yugoslavia.
It's the perfect microcosm of interwar Zagreb society, right? It wasn't an official title, it was aspirational branding. It reflects this intense social status seeking, where old imperial titles were mixing awkwardly with new entrepreneurial wealth. Ladislav was signaling that the family had moved beyond just commerce.
And he proved that status quickly. He made the shift into the corporate sector, taking a major role at Kastner and Öhler, or K&O.
The famous department store, founded back in 1881. And his skills in administration and trust, which you have to think he inherited from his father's time on the frontier, were quickly recognized. He was promoted to a crucial role, collecting the money from all the cashiers every day.
That's a position of huge trust, especially after K&O opened their credit and catalog offices in 1929.
They were handling enormous volumes of cash and debt.
But, history doesn't just stand still. World War II hits.
Right, and the political storm immediately impacts the business world. The new NDH regime, the Ustaše regime set up in Croatia, they targeted business owners.
What happened to K&O?
Well, they labeled Franjo Öhler, the owner, an anti-fascist. They disenfranchised him and sent him to a concentration camp where he tragically died in 1943.
Wow.
And the store was seized and renamed Kastner and Öhler. It just shows the immediate, brutal vulnerability of private capital to regime change.
So Ladislav, seeing the writing on the wall, he shifts again. He moves to his second major corporate role, director of Stjepan Kugli.
That's the one. The big office supply, stationery, and publishing store nearby. And under his directorship, Kugli prospered. This was really the peak of the family's economic success. The sources note he was traveling through Austria and Germany in a chauffeur-driven limousine, advancing the company's business.
It's just jarring to read that timeline. One day you're in a chauffeured limousine, and the next, the entire structure of the state collapses.
Exactly. The end of the war brought the communist regime, and the outcome for private enterprise was, well, it was swift and devastating.
As swift?
It was instant. Kugli was immediately nationalized by the communist government, renamed IP Mladost, and Ladislav was replaced. The success that he and his father had built, the accumulated knowledge, the businesses, the titles, it was all just dissolved and seized by the state in a matter of days.
And he finished his career.
Where? In various roles within the new state-run publishing and packaging industries. And then he made handicrafts at home until he died in 1986. That abrupt shift from corporate director back to being an employee of state entities is just a sobering reflection of that entire century.
The pace of collapse is remarkable. In 3 generations, the family goes from settling a military frontier to a restaurant empire to corporate directorship and then having it all nationalized.
They survived the collapse of the Habsburg Empire only to have their hard-won success dissolved by the rise of communism.
Let's quickly wrap up with the current lineage, just to ground the story for you, the listener. Ladislav and Zora had 4 children, Luisa, Maria Maja, Zdenka, and Mladen.
And the line we primarily followed through the source material is Maria Maja, born in 1935, who married Dr. Zelimir Juricic. Their son John, who likely helped compile some of this history, married Colin Sullivan.
And they have 4 children, Daniel, Sarah, Michael, and Catherine. And the youngest descendant mentioned is Luke, born in 2014. So we have this meticulously documented history spanning over 130 years and at least 5 generations that crosses multiple borders and empires.
Which brings us back to the synthesis, the Maldini story, from Sirmium to Zagreb. It's a perfect microcosm. It shows how the family successfully transformed from Italian-descended settlers in a volatile military frontier to highly successful, diversified entrepreneurs.
Only to have their assets, the restaurants, the corporate roles, the social status, systematically nationalized or destroyed by this rapid succession of collapsing empires, wars, and new political systems.
And this raises a profound question. The Maldinis moved from the ethnically mixed ancient land of Sirmium to the more urban, commercial center of Zagreb. But considering how often the region's borders, names, and rulers changed in just 3 generations, I mean, from Habsburg to the state of Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs, to the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, to the NDH, then Communist Yugoslavia.
So, does geographical mobility ultimately provide more stability than trying to hold on to a fixed place like that cemetery crypt they left behind?
And what knowledge, what form of capital is truly durable when everything else, restaurants, job titles, corporate names, even the concept of private ownership, is constantly being renamed or nationalized?
That's the perfect final thought. Something for you to explore as you consider this deep dive. What did the family carry across all those borders and revolutions that couldn't be seized? How much of the original Srem food, the recipes, the knowledge of survival from the military frontier remains in the family culture today?